All right, everybody. Ready to dive into a career path that I bet you never even considered.
Yeah, I'm ready.
We're talking about a water conservation technician supervisor.
Okay.
Sounds pretty niche, right?
It does.
But stick with us because this deep dive is going to open up a whole world, like a world where you can make a real difference in a job and maybe even make a pretty impressive amount of money.
Yeah, you're not going to be sitting in a cubicle in this job.
Definitely not.
No way.
Yeah.
Think about it being on the cutting edge of sustainability. You're overseeing the installation of systems that capture rainwater so we can use it again.
Yeah.
Even that water that goes down your drain, we call that gray water.
Yeah.
You're recovering it, you're filtering it, you're storing it, and then you're distributing it. And of course, you have to make sure this is all being done within regulations.
Right. And speaking of regulations, this is not your typical desk job, are we right?
No.
This is like the ultimate home renovation show. But instead of just flipping houses, you are future-proofing our most valuable resource. So we're talking about real tangible impact here. But what does a typical day actually look like for a water conservation technician supervisor?
You know, it's interesting because you are like a conductor of an orchestra.
Okay.
But instead of musicians, you're managing technicians, water flow, and regulations. You could be analyzing water samples one day, and then the next day you're on a construction site, maybe on a rooftop,
Yeah.
troubleshooting some kind of rainwater harvesting system. It's a very hands-on job. It's challenging. And yes, sometimes you're dealing with things that wouldn't exactly be considered fresh water.
Okay. Not so fresh water. I think that's putting it lightly.
Right.
The RoleCatcher guide we're looking at mentioned potential exposure to hazardous materials. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's going to vary a lot
Yeah.
depending on what projects you're working on. But you could be dealing with water sources that are contaminated. You could be handling certain chemicals that are used in the water treatment process. You might even be working in environments that are hazardous.
Wow.
So safety is paramount. I mean, that goes without saying, but it's really important in this line of work.
Yeah.
And a good supervisor is going to be able to assess risks and make decisions quickly to make sure that their team is safe.
Wow. So you're not just managing water, you're managing risk, too.
Yeah,
That's intense.
it is.
But on a lighter note, the guide also mentions that a water conservation technician supervisor could actually earn a higher salary than a traditional plumber,
Yeah.
which is pretty impressive,
Yeah.
especially given, like we said, the positive environmental impact.
Right. You know what it is? As water becomes more and more scarce,
Yeah.
especially globally, the people who have the skills to conserve it and manage this valuable resource are going to be in really high demand.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it's one of those career paths where your expertise translates directly into earning potential.
Okay. So we've established this job has real-world impact, a decent salary, even a touch of danger. But what about the actual skills needed to succeed? Because the RoleCatcher description mentions social perceptiveness and
Mhm.
even persuasion. So is this a job for introverts? What do you think?
You know, you're going to be interacting with people a lot. Your team, contractors, maybe even homeowners who are trying to make their properties more water efficient. But it's more about clear communication and being able to problem solve together than it is about being the life of the party.
Okay.
Right. You don't have to be super extroverted to be successful in this job.
Right. So you're saying you don't have to be a social butterfly
Yeah.
to do well in this job,
Right.
which is good to know. But let's talk about how somebody actually gets into this line of work. How do you become a water conservation technician supervisor? Is it years of like specialized schooling, or are we talking about more of a learn as you go kind of path?
Well, the good news is there are a few different paths you can take to get into this field.
Okay.
So that's good news for anybody who's out there listening and thinking this sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah.
A high school diploma is usually going to be the minimum you need,
Oh,
but a lot of employers are looking for people who have certifications or who have specific training in water conservation techniques.
okay. So this must be where those certifications that we touched on earlier come in, like the CWCM and CWE,
Yes,
which, by the way, sound like superhero initials.
they do.
Can you break those down for us? What do those actually stand for, and why are they valuable?
Yeah, so the CWCM stands for Certified Water Conservation Manager.
Okay.
And that's really geared toward people who want to lead water conservation programs, oftentimes for like municipalities or large organizations.
Okay.
They're experts in things like analyzing water use, figuring out strategies for conservation, and of course, navigating all of those regulations.
So it's a big picture certification.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly.
What about the CW?
So the CWF stands for Certified Water Efficiency Professional,
Yeah.
and they are more focused on the technical side of things.
Okay.
So think of them as the folks who can walk onto a property, look at how they're using water, and recommend the best fixtures, appliances, and landscaping practices to use.
Okay.
They could be involved in everything from retrofitting buildings that already exist to designing brand new buildings with water conservation in mind.
Wow. So you've got your big picture people, and then you've got your hands-on efficiency pros.
Right.
And then there's that green plumber certification. Is that really a thing?
It is.
There's really a green plumber?
Yeah, green plumber is a real thing.
Yeah.
And those plumbers are all about using plumbing practices that save water.
Okay.
So that might be things like low-flow toilets, low-flow shower heads. They're going to fix leaks, obviously. That's important.
Right.
And they even work on things like gray water recycling systems.
Okay, green plumber is going on my list of dream job titles. But jokes aside, it seems like these certifications aren't just about getting letters after your name. It's really about gaining practical skills that turn into on-the-job expertise. So how does someone even begin to acquire these skills? Are we talking about trade schools, apprenticeships, online courses? Like, where do you even start?
All of the above.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a real mix, and that's part of what makes it, I think, accessible for people.
Yeah.
You can find certificate programs at community colleges, you can find online courses from organizations that are well known, and you can even get hands-on training working through plumbing associations.
Okay.
Some people even go to college and get a degree in, say, environmental science or engineering, and then they come into the field that way. And then some people work their way up. They start as a technician, and then they end up in a supervisory role.
So there's no one right path, which I think is encouraging for anyone out there who might be feeling a little bit intimidated by this idea of like, oh, I'm going to make a career shift.
Right.
So that's really good to know. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the actual work that's involved. I'm curious about these functions and core abilities that the RoleCatcher guide mentions.
Right.
What are some examples of how a water conservation technician supervisor might actually use these skills every day?
Okay, well, let's imagine this scenario. You are tasked with improving water efficiency for a large commercial building.
Okay.
One of your core abilities is understanding water pressure and how fast the water flows.
Okay.
And this isn't just about knowing how to use a wrench.
Right.
It's about actually being able to calculate the optimal pressure that you need to get the water where it needs to go effectively, while at the same time minimizing waste.
So it's this balance between making sure it's functional and making sure that you're conserving.
Right, exactly. You'd use that knowledge to figure out, okay, what's going on with the building's current plumbing system?
Yeah.
Are there areas where the water pressure is too high? Because that's going to be wasting water.
Right.
And then you start to think about what solutions you can implement, like pressure regulators or low flow fixtures. So you're taking your technical expertise and using that to achieve environmental goals, but also economic goals too.
Right, because that saves money too.
Exactly.
It's like being a water detective, but instead of tracking down criminals, you're tracking down inefficiency.
Yes.
Okay, I like it. So you need that technical foundation. We've established that. But what about those more interpersonal skills?
Yeah.
Like the communication, the teamwork, the leadership. How do those come into play?
Those are essential too. I mean, they really do go hand in hand with all the technical stuff. So let's just go back to our commercial building example for a second. You've identified some areas for improvement,
Right.
but now you have to communicate that to the building owner.
Yeah.
And they may not be well versed in water conservation at all.
Right.
So you have to be able to explain it in a way that they can get on board.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's where your communication skills are really, really important. You need to be able to explain the problems, you need to present the solutions, and then, of course, you have to be able to talk about the benefits, both for the environment and financially.
Right.
You're selling it, and that might look like, I don't know, creating a report, maybe giving a presentation, or sometimes it's just having a clear and concise conversation with somebody.
And you've got a whole team of people that you're leading too, right?
Right.
So you've got to make sure that everybody on your team is on board, that everybody understands the plan, and that things are getting done the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. And on time and on budget, hopefully.
Right.
Leadership and teamwork, those are so important in this role. You might be working with plumbers, you might be coordinating with landscapers, even engineers sometimes to actually make all of this stuff happen. So it's about bringing everybody together, making sure everybody's on the same page, and that everybody understands the goals and that you can all work together.
Okay, so you're not just a technical expert, you're a project manager. You're a communicator. You're a team leader. It's like being the water conservation CEO of that building.
I like that. Water conservation CEO. That's a great way to think about it.
There you go. Put that on a business card. But so you have to be a good CEO, right? Like any good CEO, you have to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about certifications.
I did.
But it's not like you just stop learning.
They're just learning.
New technologies are always coming out. There are new regulations, new best practices. So you really have to be committed to continuous professional development if you want to be successful in this job.
Yeah, you can't just be like, okay, I learned everything I need to know.
Right.
I'm done learning. I mean, I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't.
Right. You can't just rest on your laurels. So you're saying this isn't a career for somebody who just wants to coast.
No.
You got to stay on top of it.
You do. The best water conservation technician supervisors are constantly learning. They go to industry conferences, they take those online courses we talked about. They might even work on research projects so they can really be on the cutting edge.
So we've established that this is more than just a job, right?
Yeah.
This is really a career that you need to be committed to. You need to have a real passion for making a difference in the world. But for somebody who's just starting out, it might not be clear, like, okay, where do I begin?
Right.
What advice would you give to someone who's a little bit intrigued but not quite sure how to even dip their toes in the water, so to speak?
I think starting small is okay.
Okay.
You don't have to have all the answers right away. You don't have to walk out of here and get your dream job tomorrow. Volunteering is a great place to start.
Yeah.
You could volunteer at a local water conservation organization. You could try to get an internship with, I don't know, a water utility company or something like that. You could even shadow somebody. Find someone who's doing this and see if you can just follow them around for a day.
Yeah, see what they do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think those are all great ways to get a feel for what the work is really like and to meet people.
It's all about getting your hands a little dirty, so to speak,
Yes.
and seeing, okay, what is this really like?
Right. And who knows, you might surprise yourself with what you're capable of.
Absolutely. And as you're, like you said, volunteering or interning or whatever, don't discount the power of networking.
Yeah.
Right?
So important.
Like, talk to people in the field, go to events, find some groups online where people are talking about water conservation.
Yeah. Online communities are huge for this.
Yeah. I mean, you can learn a lot just by being around people who share your passion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So as we kind of start to wrap up this deep dive here, I think it's really important to reiterate that even though there are some challenges in this career path, there are some incredible rewards too,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
both personally and professionally.
Yeah, it's incredibly fulfilling. At least it is for me. You're not just earning a paycheck. You're really helping to do some good in the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, water is our most precious resource. If we don't have that, what do we have?
Exactly. So if you are somebody out there who really cares about the environment, if you like problem solving, and if you want a career that's always changing, then becoming a water conservation technician supervisor could be the thing for you.
It could be. It's a career with a huge impact, that's for sure.
It is. Well, hey, this has been a great deep dive. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, me too.
Hopefully it was informative for everyone listening.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone, every drop counts.
It's so true. And on that note, we'll see you next time. And thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.